have a moment of silence. The county board stands with the people at the Alina Clinic for everything that had happened there. Alina Clinic will also be having a moment of silence at 11 o'clock this morning. So keep that in mind, if you would. All right, we will call the county board meeting to order for February 16th, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everybody. All righty. The dispense with the readings, approve the minutes of February 2nd.
I will move the minutes, Mr. Chair.
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Vetch. Is there any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Review and approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add? Or
Talking with Mr. Detchen, I think we're going to lay over the 923 item D2 to a future meeting. Matt can speak more to that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm hoping to lay over the Marquardt Wetland Bank full application. Hoping to do it next week. There were some discussions between our engineer and the engineer on this project that didn't happen with the holiday weekend. I was hoping to have more for you guys today, so.
Okay, so just item D2 you want pulled?
Yep.
Alrighty, thank you. Is there anything else that needs to be added?
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve the agenda with the modification of removing item D2 from the timed agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Wetter. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like removed for further discussion with the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, letter B, number 4, please.
B or D?
B is in boy.
There wouldn't be D, I am B.
Administration Finance warrants issued between January 27th and February 9th.
Right, and it'll be brief, kind of some generalizing for,
All right, does anybody else have anything else they want removed for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item B4.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Wetter. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Commissioner Ketchmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was reviewing over the weekend a 54-page list of bills that basically are paid for, I believe, for a month. And just a couple examples for maybe for the future for more information being put out. There was one, for example, True North Consulting for $3,354. And I guess I'm looking for in the future under the description to have just a little more information of where that went. And and just something more than just that. There's another one that says TCC propane, $1,755.87. I've got probably 10 examples that are same or similar. And Mr. Kelly, is there something, I'm not sure who drafts this up, is this a month's worth of bills then?
Commissioner Ketchmark, so this would be the period, the last, basically 2 weeks, since we had a workshop last week. So, from the 27th of January through February 9th. What you see in this report comes out of our IFS system. We could certainly try and add more in the description, but given the column, we might be a little bit limited in the amount of characters we can get in there.
So that propane bill is $17.55, does anybody know where that went?
Well, based on the code, it would tell you that it was probably parks or outlying shops. So there's a code. Lindsay, would you
You have a page?
explain it a little bit better maybe on how it all works?
I am nervous about our ability to add more in the general ledger system, which basically it's our data entry where we track all of the expenses that come through. We only have so many characters to have any sort of an explanation whatsoever. But as Commissioner Delyden had suggested, it is directed based on the accounts. If you recall, last week we had a discussion about how the fund, program, department, all that information is in the general ledger account string. It will give you the information that tells you which department. Now, I don't have it open at the moment, and I don't know which page you're on.
That was page 5.
That's page 5, yeah.
It's called TCC.
Yeah, but there's a number
Right, there was.
for
Commissioners,
it, and that tells you what department.
Commissioners, if I may, I see that comes up as 111, which would be our building and facilities department. I believe that is the training facility for the sheriff's office, propane fill there.
So that's 1 week of propane to heat the place,
I
1,700?
can't say that
The
it's a
bill.
week.
The bills for however long
They
it
fill
was
the tank
for.
up and however long the tank
Yeah.
lasts. The tank could last a month, it could last, you know.
Could be several months.
Yeah.
Hopefully longer than a month.
Because I thought about that, Mr. Chair, but TCC, then up above, there was training center, tactical training center was spelled out for another bill. So, you know, they go from a name to an acronym. Just if there was something a little more, if possible, would help.
As far as vendor names, those are who specifically we cut the check to. So we wouldn't change it based on, it's the legal description that they've provided us.
No, under description though, it says it was for propane for TCC, right? And Mr. Kelly's saying that's Tactical Training Center. And up above, there's another bill, I think it's plumbing and heating, that's actually spelled out Tactical Center. So maybe if we got consistency, if you can print it out for one, you could print it out for the other, instead of two initials and a name for one place. And that would be helpful.
I will certainly check that out. Excuse me, I will certainly check that out.
But we can have further discussions later about maybe how to put a little more info to interpret these numbers so that, again, it's Friday, about noon, we get 54 pages. There's nobody here yesterday to clarify anything, and now we're here at 9 o'clock with a meeting to potentially discuss or approve this. So this was just kind of the perfect storm to request a little more information for a little bit of time we have.
Lindsay,
That's all I have.
with the new finance system, it will be a lot easier to decipher a lot of those different things, won't it, with better descriptions and stuff, with the new finance system?
I'm not certain at this time. I will talk to Heather about it because she'll be more informed on that. Between her and Ryan, they should have the information that I can share with you pretty quickly after our meeting here today.
Okay, thank you.
Because this is open for the public to print and look at also, and they're not gonna have access, so they're just left with, well, geez, you know, looks good or not, but, so a little more for, I guess, John Q. public to even look at.
Yeah, the only way we could really explain or help people decipher it would have the numbers and what department it attaches to, so that'd be another few more pages added to it, but
I'm willing to work with, you know, whoever later to see if there is anything there.
Mr. Chair, I mean, I think what you're suggesting is fair, if doable within reasonable. Just because, I mean, looking at it internally for a lot of us, we know what it is, but, you know, somebody else, like you're pointing out, the general public would look at that and go, I have no idea what that is. And that's a fair point out, so I applaud for you bringing that forward. And we can always work harder to make improvements, so.
Yeah, but when we first got on the board, none of this stuff was even available to the public. So at least we're getting more information out there.
Yep.
Baby steps.
Yeah,
Okay,
all right. So,
I'll make a move to approve
okay,
the warrants.
I'll second that.
motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Mr. Gregory Picard, our Veteran Services Officer.
Morning, Board. Morning, Chair. So what you have in front of you is we've got another generous donation from the DAV Chapter 37 down in Hutchinson. This is the second one, just from the chapter itself, and then we've also got one from the Ladies Auxiliary we got a few months ago. It's a $2,500 donation to use for our department as we see fit. I typically use this for when all the other state, federal programs, there's a gap in services, or I can't get that veteran the help that they might need, even if it's a partial help. So that's what we use these funds for, or any other kind of pop-up expenses that we have.
All right,
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
all right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution accepting the donation of $2,500 from the DAV Chapter 37 in Hutchinson, Minnesota.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any other discussions? You'll be sending them a thank you card?
Yes, sir.
Would you also want the board to send a thank you card too?
I can do that, or I can draft the letter and you all can sign it, however you prefer it.
Board, thoughts? I'd like to do that. I think it's,
I mean, yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that'd be nice to let them know that we really appreciate it.
Okay, I'll draft the letter and I'll send it through admin to get to you guys for signature.
Thank you.
all right, thank you. It's a resolution, Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Mr. Riley. Planning and zoning.
Yes, Mr. Chair, County Board, the roster you have in front of you is our working solar work group. We have a meeting scheduled for February 24th from 2:30 to approximately 4:30 as a Teams meeting. The issues to be resolved on the Planning Commission, we have 3 members that expressed interest. We do not want a quorum, so we need to limit that to 2 with a alternate. We had 2 representatives from the industry that are listed at the bottom of the list, Dean Leishow, Sunrise Energy, and David Watts, U.S. Solar, that weren't necessarily discussed at the last meeting or put on the committee list, but they did express interest. And then there were a couple of commissioners that indicated they might reach out or find other people in the meantime from our last meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Sean? Yeah, I did, I reached out to my 5 townships, and I just heard back from 2 in the same township, Buffalo Township, and John Schmidt has served on the last time he's interested, and Terry Weezy, I said, you know, we do have Don, I talked to Don, and he said, you know, that's fine if we just have one of us from the township, so that would be, I think that would be a good add.
Would you like me to call both of them and go over what that it's a Teams meeting and how that works and make sure
I did
one
talk,
of them can do that?
yeah, I did have a discussion with one, so,
Okay.
but we do have the ability to have some in person, right?
Or to call in.
Or to
is
call in,
always-
yep.
Right. So was that Don you're referring to? Okay.
So at this point, it'll all be Teams meeting, there'll be no in-person.
Oh, okay, I thought we were gonna,
Yeah,
I
I
thought we were
don't
gonna be, some of us were gonna be in the boardroom.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
At this time, we don't have a physical location. It was gonna be everybody Teams. We can address that on the fly as we need, but,
Okay,
I can
yeah.
reach out to Don and tell him as simple as even calling on the phone if he's limited to
Okay.
that.
Yeah, my apologies, I thought that some of us would be in-house and the rest would be on Teams.
Now, the two commissioners, Commissioner Vetch and Commissioner Ketchmark, is those two on it?
Correct. Yeah, we picked that last time. So on the Planning Commission, we have Ken Felger, District 4, Dan Bravender, District 5, Corey Fuller, District 3. I might defer to Mike if there's any discussion on distributing the districts, what, if you have any thoughts on the commission members.
I do, Mr. Chair. Were we set that we had to have two more from the planning commission besides me as the commissioner, but also on the planning commission, in the interest of keeping the numbers down potentially? Was that set that we really for sure wanted two off the planning commission?
Well, I would think that you'd want them, since a lot of them have been through it before and have been more involved in the solar for a longer period of time. So
And
I
any
think,
solar ordinance is gonna have to go before them, so you want them to have at least a background at least some of the members have a background as to how we got to the ordinance that we'd be presenting to that commission at some point.
Okay, and then I'll go through what I know about these three. Dan Bravender, I talked with him. He's in favor of the pick I already had from Cokato Township, so I'm seeing that as basically more of from the same district, which I think we could potentially, there's other areas of the county we should have representation for rather than stacking up Cokato Township with two.
yes, no, I agree. There should be one from your district, I think one from Commissioner Vetch's and one from Commissioner Houston. I don't know if Commissioner Letter had anybody.
Well, we would have Ken Felger.
Yeah, if
would be
Mr.
District
Felger
4.
is,
So if we
He
put,
would be,
Okay.
yep.
if
he'd
we
be-
put Dan Bravender as the alternate from your district, Cokato area, were you leaning towards Corey Fuller?
Well, and Corey, as far as background, I don't know what Mr. Felger had to do, if anything, with the one 5 years ago or anything
He
since.
did.
But
he did.
Corey said that his job knowledge and description now is working with solar as part of working for an energy company, Great River, I think.
Yes, he does.
So that's somebody that's familiar with it, but he is new to the planning commission. He just started this year too.
Yeah.
So just so everybody's got a little background on who we're talking and considering here.
So that would give us somebody, at least one person from every district.
All right.
And then I don't know if there's thoughts on any additional industry representatives described on the bottom of the page.
Unless somebody from Excel or Wright Hennepin has an interest. But Corey works for Great River Energy, so,
So he'll be on the planning commission.
Yep.
So our industry representatives at this time are Evan Carlson from IPS and Rob Schultz, Minnesota Native Landscape. I don't know if the county board feels one way or the other on having additional industry representatives.
Well, we probably should have more than one solar installer, just because you wouldn't want to feel like it was tailored to one company's.
no, I agree.
So I think, whether one of those two should be part of it, because I don't want to feel like, or if both, I want to make sure that there was a good demographic of capital when it comes to the different contractors.
So my input at that point, Commissioner Vetch, may be just, since it's a Teams meeting and pretty easy to send out invites and get input, how about I just include those two in our roster?
I think that's a good idea.
And those are both the solar
They are.
representatives. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree.
Then they can have their due input.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Corey would be a good addition with his knowledge with Great River Energy.
And do we need a motion there then, or is this just kind of more of a discussion piece? I just don't know if we have to solidify the appointments to this committee, or maybe we should, Administrator Kelly, for these best practices, or?
It'd be good to solidify if you have some or all.
All right, then, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve these appointments to the solar work group with the moving of Dan Bravender to an alternate, and then adding the other industries of Dean Leeschow and David Watts to a members.
In the township,
Don
Buffalo
Schmidt.
Township.
Oh, and Don Schmidt is a township representative as well. I'm sorry.
Ending in the date, or for this was?
We're meeting next Wednesday, 2:30 to 4:30.
Okay,
Thank you.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
John?
Good morning, Mr. Hawkins. We're a little bit behind.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, Board of Commissioners. Today, there's 3 highway items for your consideration. The first one is to approve a resolution supporting local road improvement application that we're submitting, the county's submitting for Highway 19 and 37 intersection in Otsego,
37 or 39?
39 and 19.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution supporting the application for local road improvement program for the CASA 19 and CASA 39 roundabout.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any other discussions? You have anything else to add on that, Virgil?
No, well, actually, yeah, there is some other good news with this. We did receive, last week, we just found out from a separate pot of safety money, we received a $400,000 grant towards this project. In this LRIP application, we could get some more grant money to help us pay for that project that we're planning to build in 2023. So I just share that with you too.
All right, thank you. We had a motion and second. Resolution, Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Thank you. Next item.
Okay, thank you. The second item is to approve a resolution of final acceptance for contract 1903. This was our Highway 39 buffer lane project, a safety project between Monticello and Otsego. Knife River did the work for us, and the final amount of payment is $43,490.75. And the certificate of performance, final voucher, and resolution of acceptance is included in your packets.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution of final acceptance for contract 1903.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Houston. Any other discussions? Resolution, Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Item 3.
Thank you. Yeah, the next item, this is also local road improvement program applications that townships and cities under 5,000 are eligible to apply for this funding also, but they need a resolution of support and sponsorship from the county. And there's actually 9 agencies that are applying right now. And so there's 9 separate resolutions for City of South Haven, City of Montrose, City of Annandale, Monticello Township, Corinna Township, Clearwater Township, Buffalo Township, and actually Buffalo Township has 2 separate applications. So I'd like to get the board's approval of these, and then the townships and cities would submit their projects, and they'd be based on their own merits as to whether they get funding or not.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Vetch.
I think there's a few more that are out there. I think Silver Creek is bringing one forward as well. I think you've seen that as well, that we'll bring in a future meeting, correct?
Correct. We got a late entry here at 6:30 this morning in my email that Silver Creek got one in that we're hopefully able to get the resolution prepared by noon tomorrow, which is a deadline for next Tuesday's meeting, and there could be even more come in. There's still some days ahead of the deadline.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if we could just add that one, I mean, if we give a brief info, get that resolution approved here at this time, I mean, based on all the information that we have, I mean, other than you need a little bit more technical stuff on the backside, but wanted to get your thoughts on that, Virgil.
Well, that might be more of a legal question. We could prepare the resolution and have it ready for next Tuesday's board meeting.
And they'll still make the deadline then, correct?
Yes, it will, because the deadline for the townships to submit is March 3rd. If we get it approved next Tuesday on the 23rd, we could get it signed and back to them before the deadline.
Then we can wait till next week. I thought the deadline was a little bit sooner than that, so.
Yeah, easy.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution of support and sponsorship for each of the 9 local agencies for road improvements. So for the townships of Buffalo Township, Clearwater Township, Corinna Township, Franklin Township, Monticello Township, City of Annandale, City of Montrose, and City of South Haven.
I will second that with a question. We can do them all at once.
As long as you're all voting the same, I suppose.
I guess if we want to do them separately, we can if somebody has a
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Vetch, a second by Commissioner Houston. Does any other of the commissions have one of these that wants to deny? Okay. Resolution, Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 So resolution carries unanimous for all of them at one time. On another note, Virgil, I understand, maybe I misunderstood, but there's money, $2 million that the county has received for County Road 36 in 2025, or is that just money that is potential?
Yeah, that's a good point. We just found out at our Region 7W Technical Advisory Committee, our project, our Highway 36, between I-94 and 101 was the top-ranked project. So now it goes to the Policy Advisory Committee this Friday to formally get approved, and then we would receive $2 million for the year 2025.
That's good news to
Yeah.
hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I mean, we're hoping it's not contentious. There was a little bit of a scoring error that happened that maybe gives some people some heartburn at the discussion on this project. I guess Virgil can probably speak to it more in detail than I could in terms of how that error came in on the scoring, but originally the scoring showed that Sherburne County was going to be scored higher on the project than we were, but then when it was revised, it put us on top, so there's a little bit of heartburn between Sherburne County then not getting funded for their project. But I'll turn it over to you, Virgil, maybe if you want to. So we have to.
Yeah,
on Friday.
just to kind of summarize it, when the Technical Advisory Committee meets every year, MnDOT has staff that score all the applications. And our application, there's 7 different categories, and one of them is equity. And our equity score was low, and it should have been high. So we brought that up, and it was talked about. And then MnDOT decided to adjust it, and then that put our project scored as the highest. And here, typically, there's 7 or 8 projects that are submitted, and only 2 of them get funded because there's a lack of transportation funding at the federal level. And they're all good projects. They're really scored very high, all of them. So a lot of times it does come down to equity. And Sherburne had received a project, they received money last year, $1 million, and we hadn't received federal money since 2018. So it could come up at the policy meeting, but unfortunately it was scored incorrectly to begin with, and that's what's caused a little bit of maybe heartburn about it.
Okay,
Thank you, Virgil.
thanks, Virgil.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Good news to hear.
Yes, it is. Thanks.
We'll see you at 10:30
Yes.
for our highway meeting. Okay. Mr. Matthew Detchu, I'm disappointed that we're not going to be able to talk about another ditch today. I mean, normally these are always so exciting and just easy to do.
Yeah, same with this one that we have still on the agenda. So, the one that I have still on the agenda is to review the county ditch number 31 located in Woodland Township joint review panel recommendations. As you remember, a while back, we submitted a repair report for this ditch. There were some disagreements that started this process under 701 subdivision 2 due to there being public waters along the ditch system known as Ruckles Lake. So with that, it actually started this process, which is a fairly new process, where we would have our representation. Our engineer is Joe Lewis from Houston Engineering, who will be presenting most of this. A member of the Soil and Water Conservation District, which is Luke Johnson, and then a representative from the DNR, which is the area hydrologist, James Bedell. So with that, I will let Joe take over and kind of summarize the repair recommendations and what the panel came up with. Thanks.
Thanks. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. I'm hoping this all works out just fine. I haven't, logged in remotely, and so thank you, Chair and members of the commission, and Matt. So, as Matt gave the introduction there, well, first off, can I get like a thumbs up or confirmation that this is all working and I'm getting, I'm sharing my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
Looks great.
Okay, great. So, as Matt alluded to, I basically drew the short straw and get the chance here to go over the joint panel work. So what I'll do is step through our findings, basically our work, and I think James with the DNR and then Luke with the SWCD are also on the call today. So I'll just offer it to them, at any time, jump in with a comment or something you want to clarify, either during this or at the end. Certainly, I'm open to that. So just to go back to the basics here on Wright County Ditch 31, this is located in Woodland Township, south central part of the county, about 4 miles south of Waverly, and a couple of county roads that it does intersect and cross. For reference, County Road 8 here in the center part of the main trunk running from Lazarus Lake north and then east to another County Road 30 crossing here on the eastern part or downstream end of the system. So that's what we're looking at. That's where the ditch is located. Okay, so Wright County, the Drainage Authority ordered a full system repair approximately a year ago, and that was to the as constructed and subsequently improved condition. So that term, the ACSIC, is basically the characteristics of the ditch, the alignment, depth, and dimensions that that was recently formally adopted through a record reestablishment process following statutes in Chapter 103E or drainage law. Okay, so that term is important because it basically defines the maximum extent of repair or maintenance work that can be considered a repair without triggering a improvement proceedings, which is basically to expand the capacity of the system, which we're not doing. So the next step after that full system repair initiation was to inform the Minnesota DNR about the potential to affect public waters as a result of that repair. So that's done under 103E, section 701, subdivision 2, which is on this slide spelled out. And I highlighted a couple of things here, basically to walk through that process. So when the repair is ordered, the Drainage Authority must notify the commissioner, that's the DNR, if the repair may affect public waters. So that was done. If the commissioner or DNR disagrees with the repair depth, the engineer, a representative appointed by the director, and the Soil and Water Conservation District. So that's the joint panel. That's what we're doing. We must jointly determine the repair depth using soil borings, field surveys, and other available data or appropriate methods. And ultimately, we must determine that repair depth and recommend it to the Drainage Authority. So again, those joint review panel members, James Bedell with the DNR, Luke Johnson with the SWCD, and then myself, Joe Lewis, engineer with Houston Engineering. Okay, so back to a map view here. Lazarus Lake is at the very upstream end of the system. Its outlet is Wright County Ditch 31. In several hundred feet, it crosses County Road 30 and then pretty quickly enters Ruckles Lake. Traverses through Ruckles Lake and serves as the outlet for Ruckles Lake. So repairing, doing work or maintenance work or repair work inside of the channel there has the potential to affect the public water. So that's what triggered the notification to the DNR. Okay, so through our joint review panel discussion, we kind of really had to land on how we're going to approach this. Our guidance from the statute was to use data essentially to come up with a recommendation. It wasn't specific, so we really landed on sticking to the really basic statutory definition or requirements. So the language within the subdivision 2 of section 701 says that the panel must determine a repair depth. Okay, so that repair is defined in statute also. So that repair is to restore all or a part of the drainage system as nearly as practical to the same hydraulic capacity as originally constructed and subsequently improved. And it goes on and expands a little bit to cover a few more things, but that's the basic summary of a repair. Okay, so we concluded that we're going to stick to that just repair definition and determine what kind of repair depth through these segments of Wright County Ditch 31 that may affect a public water. We're just going to determine what can be considered a repair by that definition. And lastly, it was a perspective of the panel is that this is not a recommendation of a repair project. Okay, we're just simply making that determination of repair depth. So our data sources that we considered during this process included soil borings and field surveys. During the record reestablishment process completed within the last several years, we had soil borings and other field survey information already available to us, so we did not collect additional field survey or soil boring data. Didn't feel that there was a need to do that, and it wouldn't provide additional value. So the other available data or methods that we did consider was historical aerial photos, more or less to confirm the location and extent of the system. And then culvert elevations. Ideally, a culvert elevation is exactly on the original constructed depth of the channel, although there is always some uncertainty with how that culvert was most recently installed and at what elevation it was installed at in respect to the original constructed channel elevations. Okay, then we also have the design profile from 1916. So these were all things considered in the as constructed determination during the record reestablishment process as well, but that was prepared by the engineer, not the joint review panel.
Joe, this is James Bedell. Could you clarify a little bit further about the culverts and how we weighted the culverts for the commissioners, please? Yeah,
James, I think I'll cover that here in a slide or two, and if I don't cover it in enough detail that you'd like to hear, please step in again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So this is the design profile from 1916. As you see here, there is a line that represents the design profile on the bottom of this screen. So that's what we're dealing with. It's in a local datum, meaning that it's not in a modern datum tied to sea level. It's tied to a railroad spike in a tree or a large rock somewhere along the system, and all elevations are relative within the length of the project. Okay, so part of the work with soil borings that we do is to probe down through the loosely consolidated, uncompacted material that's accumulated in the ditch over the years and find that constructed channel bottom. Okay, so we use those to basically provide a reference for that design datum and then adjust it to a sea level datum. So during the record reestablishment process, we collected these every 1,000 feet. So that yielded about 24 different soil boring points that we used to translate the design profile to a sea level datum. Okay. So this was a working graphic that the joint review panel went back and forth on. And I don't want to get too in detail here, but one thing I'll mention is that there was concern that some of the soil borings collected several years ago were taken on segments of the channel that were over excavated in the past, so they did not represent the original constructed channel bottom and should not be considered as we determine the repair depth. So we excluded those ones. We also looked pretty closely at the county road crossings, of which there are a couple. County Road 30 crosses it at the downstream end, so on the eastern part of the system, and then County Road 30 actually between Lazarus Lake and Ruckles Lake. Then County Road 8 that runs north-south through the center of the main trunk channel. And then there's another, well, I think it's Dempsey Avenue, which is not a county road, but it's another road crossing. Yeah, we looked at those and how they compared to a adjusted design profile datum. And basically we had a mix. Like some supported a lower profile of the drainage channel, and some supported a higher elevation. The general range here I think was as much as 2 feet, and there's a summary table with inside of the the joint panel report that gives some details on those. So basically we zeroed in on the portion of the open channel of the main trunk near the outlets of the public waters, and said, well, there's some different perspectives within the panel, but we can be certain that a repair depth at this elevation, it's at least this low. It is slightly above our as constructed determination in the record reestablishment process. And I'll point out here on the right side is where the Ruckles and Lazarus Lake portions of the system are. So on the upstream end, so things are sloping here from the right side to the left side, and we basically came up with a determination that we're gonna tie in more or less into the existing culverts at County Road 30 between Lazarus and Ruckles Lake, and then also tie in to the current Fillmore Avenue culvert and honor the design slopes or design grades of the system as it was designed in between those points. Okay, so what was included in the report is this red dashed line, and that's on a different style of drawing, but that is the line that's represented there. And then the other lines represent some other kind of considerations or alternatives that the repair, I keep saying repair, but the joint panel considered and discussed. So I don't know, James, if that was adequate of an explanation that you were looking for.
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted to make sure that the commissioners are aware that we weighted the county roads with a little bit higher clarity because there were engineering reports that we could rely on and surveys. So that's all I really wanted to mention on that one. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. And just to elaborate a little bit more, I guess, on James's comment, the culverts, when they're placed, ideally they're tied into the design. That doesn't always happen. There is some, interpretations or some opinions that those are fixed at the design profile, but I think there's some uncertainty just in general around any culvert that's placed on a drainage system in respect to the design elevations in the original constructed depths. Okay. So to wrap things up here, our repair depth is summarized on pages 5, 6, and 7 of the Joint Review Panel report. And another recommendation is to consider other local, state, and federal requirements prior to initiating a repair. and then to consider developing a engineer's report to develop an actual repair recommendation. So I just have the slides showing the profile that's included in the report. Otherwise, that is the end of my overview of the joint panel's work. So James or Luke, if you had other comments, I guess now would be a good time. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over.
This is James. No, I don't have any further comments at this point. Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chair?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This is Luke Johnson with Wright Water Conservation District. I think Joe did a very good job summarizing what we reviewed in the panel, and I think it was a good process overall for the first time we'd all worked through this, so I want to commend him on this work, and James as well.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ratch?
Matt, or maybe Greg, one of you two will be able to answer the question. So at this time, are we looking to just receive this information, or are we actually having to adopt these findings at this point? More of a question, just because if we adopt them before, I guess would it make more sense to adopt them after we have an engineer's report for repairs recommendations? Because I'd rather have that information before I formally accept these findings.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Vetch, I think at this point in time, pursuant to Minnesota Statute 103.701, the engineer and the panel have provided you their recommended repair depth. Underneath that statute, you can now accept that joint recommendation that's been made, and then what their recommendation is to then further direct the engineer to come up with a repair recommendation based off of that panel report. So I would recommend proceeding with accepting what the panel has done and then direct the engineer to do further analysis on this project.
Okay. So I guess, Mr. Chair, it sounds like at least it was a good discussion between the three of you on coming up with these depths, because it sounds like some of between the three of them that there wasn't necessarily all agreements on what to use, which is good because that tells me that it wasn't getting railroaded one way or the other in terms of the depths that were decided at. I guess if the three of them have no members of the three of them have any overwhelming concerns, then I will make a motion to accept the recommendations of that joint review panel.
I will second that.
I have a motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsome. I do have a question. I'm trying to figure out, you said it was on page 5 and 7? I guess I don't see that report for some reason.
Yeah, pages 5, 6, and 7. It's the three. I can go to them here on the slide. So it'd be these figures.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So our repair depth recommendation is a solid dark black line within it.
Oh, I was looking for something simpler.
It's not simple.
I do have one question. What is the elevation of County Road 30, and what is the ordinary high water mark of those lakes?
That is not a number I have handy. James might or Matt might, but that was not a consideration during this process. That's something separate that would be, I guess, influencing the DNR's regulations on the work on the public water.
Yeah, I was just curious. There was one, and I can't remember what ditch because there's only a couple ditches that we have to deal with. But there was one ditch where the ordinary high water mark of the lake was higher than the road was.
That's 36.
That was
I think it was 36.
ditch 36.
Yep.
So that's what that confuses me when ordinary high water mark can be higher than our county road. So that's just why I was bringing it up. I'm just trying to get that all figured out. But this one is normal. Our road is actually higher than the ordinary high water mark then, I'm assuming.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think you need to understand here, the commissioner has never issued an order formally establishing the OHW with formal notice to the county board. They've done an ordinary high watermark survey out here, but no order has been issued by the commissioner.
So it's just historical levels. They don't have a set ordinary high water mark.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Nothing has formally been approved by the commissioner with notice to the board.
Okay.
Chairs, commissioners, this is James Bedell. To that point that Mr. Kaiser brought up, as it stands, we interpret this OHW that we have surveyed as a legally binding OHW this time. That's Mr. Kaiser's legal interpretation, but as we find it, this is a legally binding OHW.
And Mr. Chair, that's not what their actual legal counsel from DNR says. So we can have lots of circles on this thing, but I think Mr. Bedell knows that notice needs to be given to the board. So thanks.
All right, sorry that I opened up Pandora's box. But it just bothers me when the OHW is higher than our roads are, so. That was just a question I had to ask. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussions? This a resolution or just a motion?
Resolution.
Mr. Chair, it'd just be a motion to accept the joint panel report under 103.701.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. What's our next step, Matthew?
We would likely have to come up with some sort of agreement as far as costs for the continued work with Houston to present that engineering report for repairs, bring that forward to you as the board and accept that and then move forward.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the prior board last year, acting as the drainage authority for CD 31, did adopt a formal resolution for repair proceeding, which initiated the 701 panel proceeding. So the board has taken steps to proceed with the full repair. So if you want to get a cost estimate, now might be the time to do it, but you are still operating at that original resolution that was adopted just under about a year ago.
All right, thanks, Greg. Any questions or suggestions? Okay. All right, items for consideration. Commissioner Vetch, would you do the county board workshop minutes, please?
All right. So last week on Tuesday, February 9th, the county board gathered for a relatively lengthy workshop. We covered a good number of topics. As tradition, we started with discussion of meetings and setting up topics for future workshops. There was the discussion of having some items added to our April and March workshop. Those items for the recommendations would be discussing fund balance, investment income projections, long-term goals and expectations at the March workshop, as well as discussing the dental clinic and the new government center at our April workshop. The second item that we discussed was the tobacco-free grounds policy and the SHIP grant. This is kind of more of a piece to continuing in meeting the requirements to get the SHIP grant in the value of $300,000 per year. There was some discussions if there was any interest of the board in making changes to the current county policy in regards to tobacco-free grounds. It was recommended on having an annual meeting to discuss tobacco-free grounds policy from a wellness perspective, meeting the expectations of the statewide health improvement partnership grant. The third item was an update on the not CARES, but the business relief program from the funds that were given from the state legislator. We had a brief update on what funds have been allocated out at this point, and the question of whether there would be any funds left on the backside and what we would do with those funds. That was recommended to set parameters on the disbursement of the funds that are left over. In order to qualify for additional funds, businesses would have to have greater than 100,000 in losses for the additional funds. Was kind of the bigger parameter that we set, so looking for businesses that had substantial losses if we would have additional funds to disperse out. The fourth item on the agenda was a Finance and Budget 101 presentation. The Finance Director, Lindsay Meyer, kind of broke down all the different fund structures and kind of walked through how the funds are reported and answered questions from the board. There was a recommendation that commissioners speak with department heads to get help and get them a better understanding of their monthly finance report and get the questions answered that they need. The fifth item was a legislative update from Flaherty and Hood. Shane Zart from Flaherty and Hood discussed some of the DVS and the road testing and where we are at from last year to this year and whether we would have road testing available in Buffalo or not. All likelihood at this point is not looking very good. It was discussed at the board that we maybe need to ramp up more of our efforts to try and get road testing back available here in Buffalo. We also discussed the topic of the power plant hosting communities and kind of some of the transitions that are coming up ahead. And the state has interest in creating a, I don't know what you call it, a department or a commission for host communities to wean off of power plants down the road. And getting our perspective and our thoughts on that. There was also discussed the transmission lines and the change of tax rate from the local tax rate to the county tax rate, and that was an interpretation by the Department of Revenue, trying to get clarification on how that just came about just out of nowhere. Nobody really kind of seen that one coming. There's also some discussions about changing some scope and adding some more topics onto working with Flaherty and Hood, and the additional item was adding some help on waste management issues in the county and utilizing Flaherty Hood for those discussions. Going on to item number 6 was the, I guess, a meet and greet with the new DNR Central Regional Director, Grant Wilson. Kind of just had an open discussion with the board and questions and concerns that we may have from the county board perspective as it relates to the DNR and wanting to have good open conversation with the county board, trying to mitigate issues more proactive than reactive. Very nice of him to reach out to us and have that discussion. The 7th item on the agenda was the status of the new government center. Adam gave us a new updated timeline, and given some of the changes and the climate that we've endured in the last year has kind of pushed our timeline back substantially further than we were expecting, kind of moving us into that December, January of this year or the next year into the move-in date of the new government center. Informational only. The 8th item on the agenda was the discussion of a moratorium on job reclassifications. This kind of comes out of a comp and class that we adopted just over a year ago, and the wanting to stop people, or not stop people, but stop departments from making minor tweaks to job descriptions after we just went through every job description in the county as part of the comp and classification study. So the recommendation was putting a moratorium on reclassification of any jobs until the end of the year unless there is a reorganization within the department or it's a new job altogether. So saving some time of reviewing language within job descriptions, kind of more of a detailed explanation. And the 9th item on the agenda was a person to Minnesota Statute 103-075 and obstruction of ditches in cases where County Ditch 10 is part of the tree cleaning. And we need to have a discussion about moving some fencing and getting that done and what we need to do that in terms of public notice. So we had to, at that time, schedule a public hearing regarding a ditch obstruction for February 23rd. With that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the workshop minutes from February 9th and the recommendations.
Mr. Chair?
I need a second before there's
I'll
any
second that,
discussion.
and then you can.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Vett, second by Commissioner Houston. Further discussions? Commissioner Ketchmark.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just reference back to item 2 where we talk about the tobacco-free grounds, and it was omitted from the minutes, but I gave a little update and status of what our tobacco policy is, and I don't take this lightly because it is a $300,000 a year grant that's involved here. But what we currently have at Wright County for the tobacco policy is that tobacco use is prohibited in Wright County buildings and vehicles. And I know as recent as 2020, employees at all levels, including office heads and department heads, using tobacco in buildings and vehicles on a daily basis. And this is relevant towards this. Shouldn't be just a formality or check the box every year. I asked county administration staff how the current policy is enforced, and I was advised that it's up to the office or department heads. So if they're doing it, they're obviously not going to enforce it. So the other part of the recommendation was for this to be forwarded to the proper committee, which I advised Mr. Kelly, so that we can actually make some progress with the current policy that we have, rather than just checking a box that we're working towards the tobacco-free grounds, because we have a little housekeeping here with the policy we have now. That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it, because we did have a good lengthy discussion on this topic, and you know, whether you want to make the policy more stringent when you're not even being compliant on the current policy. So we had a lot of really good discussion on it, so I appreciate you kind of adding to that and giving people the snapshot that it wasn't just us checking a box in that discussion. It was kind of us really kind of having a good
Yeah, and to
step forward.
clarify it, it's not that people are smoking in vehicles or in the county building.
Oh, it is, Mr. Chair, and I have evidence and I witnessed it. So I can give you a list of 10 if you want to go that route, but I know that that's true.
Oh,
Okay.
smoking in county vehicles?
And yes, and using tobacco in county vehicles or buildings and smoking in county vehicles. Yes.
Okay. The other thing is when we hear tobacco, my thoughts is smoking, but it's also the chewing and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And that's where the majority of it is for in the buildings, because I don't think anybody is smoking inside our buildings.
Hopefully
I
not.
would hope not,
Right.
because that would be.
It would be hard to do and not get caught.
Well, yeah, and if that's being allowed by department heads, then we have another issue to deal with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any other discussions on this?
Just a quick point of interest, and it didn't come up then, but back when we moved from the old jail to the new jail, and when they built, which is now the old jail, but when they built the jail, they had the little, lighters, a little section for little, automatic lighters for cigarettes. And that opened in 1991. And we were working on policies for the new jail. And so I wrote a note. Hennepin County had written a no smoking policy for their jail. So I wrote one, and I was told this will never fly. Well, it did. And when they opened the jail, they just put little metal plates over the automatic cigarette lighters. So anyway, so that stems back now. We're looking at, 30 years ago. But back then, I mean, people smoked in their offices and they smoked everywhere. So it's been a pleasant change, but it's something to keep working toward. So, thank you.
Yeah, I was watching an older movie the other day, and everybody was smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The doctors and
Yeah, I know.
everything.
My doctor did, we go in his
don't-
office and.
I don't see that in any of the newer movies.
No.
All righty. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. And regarding the Personnel and Employee Relations Committee, we met on February 10th. All members were present, and then a number of people from the departments that were there for discussions. The county attorney, Brian Lutz, and Health and Human Services, Jamie Gooden-Schwartz, along with some of her managers. Regarding department, the county attorney's office, He had brought something forward regarding the Chief of Civil Division, a job description. There used to be a Chief of Civil at the county way back when. It was kind of set on the wayside. With things that are happening in the county, Mr. Lutz would like to have this brought back forward again, to have a Chief of Civil instead of having one people over all the attorneys, getting it split up to make it a little more efficient, to be able to monitor things, break it down a little bit. The recommendation was to approve the creation and internal recruitment of a Chief of Civil Division position in the county Attorney's Office, and the county will not be filling the vacated attorney position created by the new Chief of Civil Division position. And it was pretty much budget neutral from what things had happened. The second item was from Health and Human Services, and they had two, and I think there's a mistake here, but to temporary reclassify social worker 1 to social worker 2, and the temporary reclassify social worker 3 to social worker 2. And I believe the only one that was temporarily was the social worker 3 to social worker 2. But I may be wrong on that. Sean, are you with us? Can you clarify that for me, or is Jamie on?
Commissioner Dahlin, I believe my understanding was that they were going to temporarily classify both.
They were? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And it was cost neutral, almost,
Yeah, it was cost-
almost a minute potential savings, potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not knowing where you hire or move candidates at.
And the reason for this is that we are having problems filling the social worker 3 position. So by doing this and classifying it to social worker 2, hopefully we'll get more bodies in there, and then the social worker 2 can get the additional education and the additional experience that's required to become a social worker 3. So hopefully we'll get somebody in, or a current person that will be able to work up to their social worker 3. So that was also recommended that we approve the temporary classifications of the social workers 1 to 2 and 3 to a 2. And again, it was pretty much budget neutral and a possibility that it actually will save the county money too.
You think you covered it well?
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Commissioner Betts, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any discussions, questions, answers? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. All right, we're down to our advisory committee, advisory board updates. Administrator Kelly, I'll let you start out this morning.
Okay, very well.
Nobody steals your thunder.
Well, I appreciate that, and certainly we did not anticipate our week to go the way it did last Tuesday on, and our hearts continue to go out to those in Buffalo and the families that have been impacted. I can't say enough about our law enforcement staff, our attorney's office, and the efforts they put in. There's a few other folks I do want to mention, of course, John Holler, our communications specialist, was taking inquiries from all over the U.S., national media. Our facilities group, led by Alan Wilczek, getting rooms spun up and ready to go for press conferences, as well as IT. I know I'll miss somebody, but Director Fomby, Zach Kupal, Shelley Crammel, Frank Petita. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of folks, but it was just a great team effort to get things done in a quick amount of time that we needed to get done. So look for the positive in those situations. So a couple other things to mention, just kind of following up on some of the EDA things from last week, circling back with Bruce Kimmel on that, getting that moving, meeting with the attorneys about the process for properties and working on some of the communications, the presentation. had a discussion with Commissioner Ketchmark about perhaps drafting a letter to the townships. The early intel and discussions he's had, there may not be much interest, so perhaps we send a letter. We're more than happy to present if you're interested. If not, we'll take it as a no. So working on some language with that. And one other thing just to point out, I did receive notice that Trailblazer has the certificate of occupancy for their building expansion, so now they're running those additional buses out of there. So that's what I have for updates.
Commissioner Wider?
Oh, okay. February 2nd, I sat in on the Lake Martha and Lake Charlotte subordinate sewer service, and as many of you know, that they have quite a bit of money, and it's going to we're actually covering some of the expenses as a result. Bob Hivela came up with a number of $3,000 that would be divided over 3 years to cover the debt services and the expenses, and that would be interest-free. This amount would have to be double-checked, but they really need citizen involvement to decide what to do with the extra. There'll be a little bit extra dollars there, and so they'll need to decide what to do with that and any new hookups dollars that would result. These assessments would start in 2022. Then in February 8th, I attended the SWCD meeting, and we met the head project engineer from Moore Engineering on the North Fork, Crow River, one watershed, one plan. And she went into depth a little bit about what she would provide. We also postponed the decision on what company would do the AIS, the aquatic invasive species, at the ramp and the decon. And they decided that they really wanted to get the AIS committee input on this decision. And it was between Bishop and Waterfront Restoration. Also, there was some discussion on the Mississippi St. Cloud one watershed, one plan boundary. It seems that the Elk River watershed wants to split off from that, so they feel that they could get more discussion into that if they went separate. Then February 9th was extension, and we met the director and the educators, and also 2 committees were formed, budget and farm family of the year. I believe Mr. Dahline is on the budget committee, and I am on the farm family of the year. On February 9th also, I met with the Wright County Community Action. I understand I'm going to be on there for 3 years, the 3-year term. And we heard about many of the programs from Head Start to the seniors. And they apply for many grant applications. I was just astounded at the number that they actually apply for, so that they end up having 40 to 50 funding sources. And September 30th is their fiscal year end, and they talked a little bit about how they go to audit, and we heard how they have to send reports to the federal government, and first it goes through the state. They go over it, and they make suggestions or improvements on it, and then it would go on to the federal. And they're applying for a food security grant, and this is going to help further to pay for more equipment to the Montrose building that the Untieds had bought. And what happens there is the surplus from Untieds will go into being preserved, canned, or frozen, or whatever. But they need to get a cook and more equipment, so that's what they're gonna go for that, and it's gonna be like a possible $400,000 grant. And that's it. Anything else to add to those two, because Mr. Delline was on those two also?
I think you've pretty much covered it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Vetch?
So, going back a couple weeks now, we go to the February 4th, I had the ERJC, East Regional Juvenile Detention Center meeting. This meeting was kind of reconciling numbers from last year. We had a surplus projected roughly about $94,000 that we will be transferring into reserves. We usually have a discussion annually, deciding whether we want to send that money back to the individual entities or whether we want to put it into reserves. We've been lately choosing it into reserves because the building is starting to get older now and we're needing to make regular upgrades, which we are paying for out of reserves. One of our more recent projects, which was close to $500,000, was redoing the locks and camera systems in the facility, which, being an entirely block building, is quite expensive to retrofit those. The other discussion that we had was about the JPA. The JPA is starting to come to its fruition, and we need to put together a new JPA. In those discussions, we had to make some changes in the methodology that we use for member entities in terms of their allocations. We usually go on a bed rate, how many beds you want. We're going to do that as well, but we are going to do a little bit of a hybrid to it. So it's for the most part very similar, but just a little bit different in how we bill it out. It's going to be kind of billed out more monthly, and you'll end up having to, if you are underutilized, you'll maybe be paying a little bit more potentially. Then the other thing we had, the Bertram Advisory Committee on the 5th, we had a big discussion on branding. I think it wasn't expected to be that long of a discussion, but it became
lots of opinions.
Lots of opinions, yes. In trying to get some more universal signage, universal branding for Bertram Park. I guess after probably a good 30 minutes of discussion, we decided that we'll let staff go and put together some options for the group to discuss, because I don't think we were getting anywhere based on the way the discussion was going. Then going into the next week, our Business Relief Committee has been meeting regularly, myself and Commissioner Dahlleiden. We quite a lengthy number of businesses this last week. I still think we have 60 to 70 that are still out there that we'll be reviewing in the next week, and then we'll after that have the discussion of what we would have for funds left, and we'll bring that information back to the board.
Yeah, hopefully those that we've been waiting for additional information on have gotten that in.
Yes.
Because we can't decide until we have some of those additional paperwork.
Yes, and then the other item, myself, I will be on the new commissioners panel for the new commissioners training next Wednesday. So I'll be on that panel. So I've been having some discussions with that. I've been also having a variety of discussions with Shane Zarda, Flaherty and Hood, and got some meetings set up, one tomorrow with Marion to discuss some of these findings that we have. The DMV bill has been introduced by Representative Lucero. The landfill legislation was introduced by Representative O'Neill, so we have a number of things moving forward.
Good. Glad to hear it.
With that, I'll pass it on.
All right. In the interest of time, since everybody was discussed committees I was already on, I'll pass it on to Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I had a lot of meetings, but we met with the Central Minnesota EMS and had a little history. We actually, the Joint Powers Board was created 20 years ago, so that was kind of fun to know. And started with 14 counties, and now we're down to 11 counties. And in 2009 was when we started getting funds from the seatbelt non-compliance, and that's, as more compliance has gone up, then the funding's gone down. So we've had to cut back on the grants that we give for our local EMS firefighters and that kind of thing. But we were able to give 2 naloxone grants in Wright County, one to the Wright County Sheriff's Office and one to Howard Lake Fire Department, and the Waverly Fire Department. So 3 out of the 4 went to Wright County. Safe Schools Buffalo, again, it's same, I think, all over. They're really working with the students to bring them in, to keep them connected when they haven't had the in-person learning. And there's, of course, the school numbers, population, students are down since the whole COVID thing. And we'll see what happens as we start to open up a little more. MEDA, Mentorship, Education, and Drug Awareness. We had sort of a brief meeting, but they are in the process of hiring the Drug-Free Communities grant, the educator that will be coming on. And we had no grant requests, so it was a bit of a brief meeting. And I also had an executive committee meeting with the Highway 55 corridor, and we're getting some agenda items ready for a North Metro Transportation Summit, which is going to be on Friday, and I'll be participating on that. So otherwise, yeah, some other things going on, but I'll stop there.
Mr. Ketchmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this, again, 2 weeks worth of meetings for all of us, so it gets a little lengthy, but, so MRC met, Minnesota Rural Counties, 4-hour meeting. Potlatch might not mean anything, it didn't to me until this meeting, but it's a lumber company moving out of Minnesota. The only interest Wright County may have, it sounds like, is if you know anybody that's hunted up there, leased hunting land or rented it, you might want to check and see if you're still going to be able to do that, because some of the land's changing hands. Another thing, there's legislation introduced to move the electric car industry along a little quicker, so if you want to give any input to your legislatures, now would be a good time to get a hold of them to weigh in on that. Safe Schools met, Howard Lake, Waverly, Winstead. They wanted to have everyone in session this week in all the grades all day. Delno was looking at March 1st to have all in all day. They all report, including Health and Human Services, uprise in truancy. I don't think there's anyone left from the Sheriff's Office here. I don't know if we have roving bands of truants that are out committing juvenile crimes all day. I haven't heard of anything or read about it, but it'd be interesting to see if there's an uptick in what these folks are doing if they're not doing schoolwork. EDA met, of course, Mr. Kelly touched on it. I went to a couple meetings, a city and a township, the same day we had the EDA, and one was interested and one wasn't. So in the interest of all the cities and townships we have to potentially present and offer this service to, I talked to Mr. Kelly and Commissioner Vetch that we may want to have a little short notice to go out by email. If they are interested, we'll come. If not, we're not going to make it seem like we're forcing something upon them, especially in my area with 14 townships and cities. But Commissioner Wetter brought up that possibility of feedback the first day of the meeting, and I saw it firsthand that night. That's all I have.
I appreciate you. That idea is a good idea, because we don't want to waste our time going out there if it's a no right off the bat. We don't want to.
That's right.
Yeah, and if we can get, adequate information to them to let them know exactly what this is. We're not a taxing authority. We're,
We're
not,
just there,
not,
we're
not
there.
forcing.
for
Yep.
support.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
If you want to.
Yep.
If someone has feedback, maybe Mr. Kelly will collect that and have something maybe drafted up by the next meeting, so we're not starting on day 1 in March.
Okay.
But I know a lot of the board's been working on this well before I came, so if you got some input.
All right. Well, It is 10:24. Did anything else come before the board? Hearing none, we are adjourned. See you at the 10:30 Transportation and the Whole Committee.